What's going on, guys? The first week of football is here, and this is Run the League on 365 Sports. I'm going to get you ready for week one of the NFL season with some starts and sits of the week. Let's roll. All right, guys, so like I said, starts and sits of the week. Let's do this. Number one on the board, Jalen Hurts. Okay, so he's taking on the Atlanta Falcons, one of the worst defenses in the NFL. That's obvious. He's also a guy who's been a huge riser this season as far as the fantasy drafts go. A lot of guys are really high on him, and I'm one of those people. And so for them to come into this matchup, I just think Hurts is going to have a great opportunity to get things done with his legs. Really intrigued by the opportunity that he's going to have against a bad defense. I think they're going to run the ball a ton, but I also think Atlanta might score some points, which could allow Jalen Hurts to throw the ball a little bit more. Devonta Smith could have a big game, but I do think Jalen Hurts has the opportunity to win you quite a few leagues this week. So if you have Jalen Hurts, definitely start him. He's actually my start of the week at the quarterback position, so definitely keep an eye on Jalen Hurts against the Falcons this week. Number two, Ryan Tannehill, the quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. They take on the Arizona Cardinals this week, and Ryan Tannehill, of course, added Julio Jones. That was a big addition this year. Has A.J. Brown, has Derrick Henry. They're going to run the ball a ton, but they're also going to take some shots deep. And Tannehill's been a really effective quarterback over the past few years, even though he doesn't get a lot of attention. I feel like he goes under the radar to a lot of people, but I think the addition of Julio Jones makes them a little more explosive. I know he was on the COVID-19 list 5 days ago, but he's been back at practice. He's been getting things rolling, and I definitely think they're going to be able to put up points against the Cardinals, and I think they're going to have to put up points against the Cardinals, which is actually probably the bigger reason why I'm picking him to have a good week. So, again, Ryan Tannehill, another option for you to start this week. I think he's going to have a big week against the Arizona Cardinals. Of course, if you have Kyler Murray, start him as well, because I do think that could be the quote-unquote bonanza of the week, the game where you're going to see a ton of points by both sides, and I think both teams are going to be really successful offensively in this matchup. I also have a little bit of a DFS play this week as well, so I'll consider him a start too, but it's more so if you're in DFS lineups on whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel or whatnot. Sam Darnold, the quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, and the reason I'm picking him and the reason I'm even bringing him up is because this is a revenge matchup. He's taking on the Jets. Robbie Anderson is on his team as well, so if you have a little DFS play and you want to start both of them, do it. Sam Darnold is going for $5,000 on DraftKings right now, so I think that's great value. And I think he's going to want to show that, this was Adam Gase's fault, that his career has been off to such a bad start. But now with Matt Rule in Carolina, I think Sam Darnold's got an opportunity to be pretty successful this year, but especially in this first matchup against a really bad Jets team. So now moving over to the sits of the week, I have two names for you who I'm just not very high on going into this week, and I think you should look for some better options potentially. So the first one is Justin Herbert, the quarterback for the Chargers. So my reasoning for him, obviously, he was a guy who you probably drafted fairly early, but I just don't see it this week. He's going up against Washington. Washington has a very good defensive line. They get Landon Collins back. They have Cameron Curl also at safety. So they're going to be pretty good defensively. I think they could be a top 3 defense this year. Chase Young is going to be going after Herbert. And I just expect this to be a rough start to the year for him. So I'm not expecting huge things from Herbert. If you did draft 2 quarterbacks, go ahead and play some of those maybe safer options, or even a Sam Darnold. I think that would be a good fit as well. But yeah, Justin Herbert, a guy that I'm kind of steering away from this week. Another one, this is the unfortunate part. When you talk about sits of the week, you're talking about the first week of the year, so you don't really know exactly if the defenses from last year will translate. And this is one where I'm kind of hedging my bet a little bit because I think New England is going to have a very good defense this year. And so Tua Tagovailoa, his first matchup is against the Patriots this week. And while I think Tua's going to have a good year, I think this is a bad matchup for him. So I'm going to I'm thinking the Patriots are the team that is going to kind of have the upper hand in this matchup. I think they're going to be a much better defense this year, much more improved. So Tua, I would start him. I would sit him this week, and he's a guy who going forward you might be able to start him, but for this week alone, he's a sit. I'm out on him this week. Okay, so now let's move to the running back position. And once again, this is one of those things. It's like in every start, sit him to start the year, you're guessing on things. And right now, I think the Detroit Lions are going to be, along with probably the Houston Texans and the New York Giants, two of the worst teams in the NFL. And so therefore, I think the San Francisco 49ers are going to run all over Detroit. And in week one, I think this is Raheem Mostert time. While I think Trey Sermon could be the guy at the end of the year, I think Raheem Mostert is going to be the guy to start the year. He looked really explosive in the preseason. He's a guy who a lot of people, when you kind of rate speed, straight line speed, he's actually been the fastest guy in the NFL at the running back position over the last 2 years. So when Mostert's healthy, he is absolutely dynamic. I think against the Lions, he's going to get at least 15 to 20 carries. So I really like him as a start this week. I don't mind you looking at Trey Sermon, but I think for me at least, I'm not going to start a rookie running back who has competition ahead of him in week one. I need to see it to believe it first. My second big start at running back, and it kind of goes in line with my theory about the Tennessee Titans versus the Arizona Cardinals. I think Chase Edmonds has great value this week, especially in PPR leagues. I think he's got a really safe floor, but a lot of upside if he's able to hit on a long touchdown run, maybe at some point in the game, and he's able to add value there while also maybe gathering 60 yards receiving. I think he could have a pretty nice game against the Titans, and he's going for 4,600 right now on DraftKings, so really good DFS start for Chase Edmonds this week. Again, explosive offense. They're going to score a lot of points. I like Chase Edmonds. My sits of the week at the running back position, I have two names, and these are two guys who actually were drafted fairly high in your drafts, most likely, both right around that fourth round. One of them maybe slipped to the fifth round, but yeah, they're kind of in that range. So the first one is Deandre Swift against the San Francisco 49ers. So Swift is dealing with a groin injury, so I don't think they're going to push him really hard out of the gate in this first matchup, especially since they have Jamal Williams, a very capable running back right behind him. I also think the 49ers defense is going to be very much improved. So for those reasons, I would sit him. Just wait and see 1 week. And I know you drafted him early, so it's going to be hard to, sit him and just kind of feel like, oh, if he goes off, wow, I really ruined things for my team. But as long as you built enough depth there, you should be able to sit him with confidence. And I think this is going to be a tough week for Deandre Swift and really the whole Lions offense and really the team as a whole. I do not expect that game to be very close against the 49ers. My second guy this week, and this has everything to do with situation and the defense he's playing. So Josh Jacobs, not a huge fan of him in fantasy football this year. They brought in Kenyon Drake. I think you're going to see kind of both of those guys get some work, and because of that, it's going to limit opportunities for Josh Jacobs. The other problem is they're going up against the Baltimore Ravens, who I expect to have a top 5 defense this year. Once again, that's going to make things really, really tough. And Josh Jacobs, I think he's going to be facing an uphill battle this week, especially because he doesn't get a whole lot of work in the passing game. So he's my sit of the week at the running back position. Moving over to wide receiver, I have two names for you this week at the wide receiver position. One is kind of a deeper sleeper to an extent, but he's kind of rising on people's lists, and that's Michael Pittman, the wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. I like him as a start this week for a couple reasons. First of all, T.Y. Hilton. He's going to be out for a few games, so Michael Pittman is already kind of leading himself into that wide receiver 1 role in Indiana. So I like that part of it. Secondly, I think Seattle's going to be able to score some points against the Colts, so I think you're going to see the Colts playing a little bit of catch-up, but also just needing to put points on the board in general. So I think Carson Wentz is going to have to find his number 1, and I'm willing to bet that it'll be Michael Pittman in week 1. So Michael Pittman is a guy, if you have some question marks, especially about the sit guys that I'm going to talk about this week who are drafted a little bit higher, I think you should feel confident in potentially playing Michael Pittman this week against the Seattle Seahawks. My second start of the week at the wide receiver position is Jerry Judy, the wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. He takes on the New York Giants this week. Reasoning for this The Giants have a very solid run defense. I actually think they'll be pretty good up front. The issue is I'm just not sold on their pass defense, and I'm not sold on them being a very good team this year. So therefore, I think Jerry Judy is a guy who could have a big week this week. I think they're going to rely on their pass game. I love Teddy Bridgewater in this offense for Jerry Judy, as he's going to be a guy who shrinks the field a little bit. He's not going to take a lot of shots deep, and therefore I think Jerry Judy's going to come up with a lot of receptions and opportunities for him to do what he's best at, which is yards after catch. So Jerry Judy, 4,800 on DraftKings, so he's a guy also in DFS to definitely keep an eye on. My sits of the week at the wide receiver position, transitioning there. The first one is a guy who you drafted in the top 4 rounds of your draft, and that's kind of, again, that's going to be tough for you to bench a guy like this, but I don't love the matchup, and it's Allen Robinson of the Chicago Bears. He's taking on the Rams this week, so obviously a bad matchup going up against Jalen Ramsey. Secondly, Andy Dalton's his quarterback. I don't anticipate that lasting very long, but in this first matchup, I think it could be a really rough day for the Bears offensively. I'm trying to stay away from Allen Robinson if I can. I think he's going to have a great season, especially once Fields takes over, but in this matchup against probably a top 3 defense in the entire league, I think it's going to be really, really tough for Allen Robinson here in week 1. My second sit of the week. This is, again, hedging my bet a little bit based on the preseason. So I think Jamar Chase, the Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver, is going to have a great year. You're going to want him on your roster at the end of the year. There's no doubt about it. The talent is there. The ability after the catch is there. It's just a matter of him catching the football. But right now, it seems like he's a little bit uncomfortable in his offense, and he's a little bit uncomfortable making plays. And because of that, I think that T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are going to have the better weeks this week. And you're going up against a Vikings defense that I do believe will be improved this year. And because of all of those factors, I just don't love this matchup. And I think all the reports are Joe Burrow's having trouble staying comfortable in the pocket. There's been a lot of glimpses of bad blocking by the Bengals offensive line, which really was expected and was a huge reason why people were surprised they didn't take Penei Sewell in the first round. So I think there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period, especially against a good defense. So again, I'm off Jamar Chase this week. I'm okay if you want to start T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd, but Chase in week 1, probably not the best option, even though I do think later in the year he's got an opportunity to really excel. So final position of the week, we're talking tight ends a little bit. This is a good week to potentially stream a tight end. And my favorite streamer of the week is Austin Hooper, the tight end for the Cleveland Browns. If you did not take a high-end, high upside tight end and you need to find one off the waiver wire, I think Austin Hooper against the Kansas City Chiefs is great value. They're going to have to score points. We know the Chiefs are going to score. And so I think Austin Hooper has a chance to really capitalize and make some big plays in this offense. And I really think he's going to be the forgotten guy this week. So again, he's kind of the guy that if you didn't get somebody you really like at tight end, you're trying to figure out a way to stream, I think he's a good streamer. Now for a guy you probably did draft, Tyler Higbee. Again, Tyler Higbee's going up against the Bears this week. I think that the Rams will be able to move the football, and I think Higbee's just a really good player. And I think with Gerald Everett out of town, I think it leads to a lot of opportunities for Tyler Higbee to have a big season, and you don't want to miss the breakout game, and it honestly could be here in week 1. So Higbee, very good option if you have him on your roster. I would definitely start him with a lot of confidence this week. My sits of the week at the position, I got to start with Evan Ingram, the tight end for the New York Giants. I'm just not a huge fan of guys who are injured heading into the season. And Evan Ingram is dealing with a lot of injuries right now. He's a guy who I just firmly believe is very talented, but he can't stay on the field. And when he is limited in any capacity, he has really failed to show up and add value to your fantasy roster. And right now, he's banged up, and he's going up against the Broncos, who are expected to have a very good defense this year. I don't expect the Giants to win this game, and therefore, I think Evan Ingram's going to have a really tough time. And, I mean, overall, the Giants in general, really tough preseason. They just have not looked great, and so therefore, I'm kind of trying to stay away from all Giants, especially Evan Ingram this week. My final sit of the week is Mike Gesicki, the tight end for the Miami Dolphins. So I was kind of doing some research this week, and I had a bunch of drafts coming into this weekend, and Mike Gesicki was a guy who just continues to rise up the board. A lot of people like him I mean, this past week, he was taking over Kyle Pitts. He was taking over TJ Hawkinson. And I was shocked because you're reaching so far down the board to take Mike Gesicki. And while I think he could have a nice year, a nice role in this offense, I think Tua's shown that he really likes throwing the ball to Gesicki. I just don't like this week 1 matchup. He's going up against the Patriots. It's all the same reasons why I don't like Tua this week. I just think it's going to be a rough outing for the Dolphins offense. I think they'll be in this game because defensively it should be a nice matchup for both teams. But I'm staying away from Gesicki. And honestly, if you still have a draft coming up, do not reach on Mike Gesicki. You can get him in the 9th, 10th round, whereas I saw him go in the 3rd round this past weekend. Really shocking stuff. So anyways, Gesicki, stay away from him this week. I do not anticipate this being a good matchup, and I think you can find a better streaming option, such as an Austin Hooper. So that's it this week. That's week 1, my starts and sits of the week. Hopefully you're all prepared, all done with your fantasy drafts. It should be a really fun week 1, starting with obviously the Buccaneers and Cowboys on Thursday night. This has been Run the League on 365 Sports.